Welcome back to episode 3 of self-deception and denial in relationships. Hopefully you haven't missed the previous conversations with my former counselor, now mentor and friend, Mike Pinkston. If you have, go to either whichever way you're watching this, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, go back to the playlist under Heal the Hurt podcast, and you'll find the previous episode. So you don't want to miss any of that. This is a long conversation, almost 2 hours long, that I've broken into 3 separate videos to help you navigate it a little bit better and digest the information. And there's a lot here because self-deception is the single greatest way we keep ourselves from achieving our dreams. It's incredibly difficult to see and navigate and understand. And it's something I'm going to be talking a lot more about because it's critical in your self-development journey. If you want to have a great relationship, if you want to be a great parent, if you want to succeed in your career, self-deception is the single greatest killer that's keeping us from all of those things. Now, remember, always you can go to my free online magazine site for tons more information on many different topics. It is filled with all my videos, all my articles. There are free exercises you can download, access to the book that I've written that helps you with all of this, recommendations to other great authors and teachers, a whole section on book recommendations. You can learn more about my master classes if you want to dig deeper and do some more of this work, my private group where I coach you, also the one-on-one coaching. It is basically your one-stop shop for everything personal development. That's why I put it together to make it easy for you so you don't have to Google search everything. You just go to www.thegreatnessuniversity.com and you can find everything you need to conquer what it is that's keeping you from the greatest version of yourself. So let's finish up with all this and get right to the final part of my conversation with Mike, and I hope you enjoy it. The self-deception and the denial when it comes to 2 things, relationships and parenting. I don't need to go learn anything about those. I know what to do. I watch my parents, or I don't do that. Like, the massive amount of self-deception and denial about the pain and trauma we all experience in childhood. Everyone, like, it is not possible for any of us to escape childhood without wounds, unless you were raised by a God. Because think of it, it would require perfection to escape childhood without a wound of, or many wounds. It's just not possible. Every person is perfectly imperfect and screws up, and at times is abandoning or controlling or walled off, all these different things, especially as a society that's never taught any of it and people aren't even aware of it. So how can you even tell me your childhood was perfect and you didn't experience any of this? So the level of denial and self-deception to face any of that, own that, and do anything about it. What would you say to somebody who's listening right now, who's caught in that and going, or they know somebody and going, yeah, I don't need to learn any of that. That's a waste of time. Or I just disagree with you, Kenny. What would you say?
Well, the first thing I don't think that I would win this discussion.
You're so beautiful. I just love how kindly you say that.
Well, I'm just saying, that when you're behind that wall, it usually takes some fairly severe life events to change. A divorce, a loss of a job, a loss of a child, a loss of a mate, those kind of things, where you start asking those questions again. But the place I would tell them to look at your relationships, and look, if you've got kids, look at, how do you parent? Often we see, parents come in that, they're so upset that they can't control their kids, and they don't really have a relationship with their kids. They don't know what's going on with their kids. And I'm talking about teenagers mainly. And why? Because there's not been the model of relationship and a relationship that includes learning how to problem solve, and a relationship that includes sympathy. And so, I mean, that's the place where I think I would, when I have one, and it's usually a guy that comes in that's like this. When I have them come in, I just go, how would you judge the way you interact with your kids? Oh, it's fine. And then 5 sessions later, they're talking about how much pain they have because their kid is either going in a direction that they don't want to go in, or don't want to go in, or they're angry because their kid doesn't want to spend time with them, or they're angry because their kid isn't the good-looking, kid, so to speak. I'm thinking of this situation, not one of my clients, one of my therapists, where the dad is working really hard on trying to look good. He and daughters, one of them is a hero child and the other one's the black sheep. And he's so upset that he can't control the black sheep. He's really not controlling either one of them. One of them's just learned that if I do it this way, I look good and the heat's off. And the other, the black sheep child, she's just telling the truth. Things suck around here. And what's sad is that probably both of them, I mean, the one I'd worry about is the one that's a good child. So, but both of them are going to probably choose relationships that look like that, unless they intervene for themselves. And, I would have thought that I was really good at that kind of stuff too. And if I hadn't gone through a divorce, I thought I was a good husband. And I didn't know anything about relationships. I mean, like you said, where are you going to learn it? From 2 drunks? I mean, no, you're not. You're going to learn intensity. You're not going to learn intimacy. But that put me in enough pain that I knew I had to do something different. If I wanted, I didn't want to be my age now and not have relationships with my kids, not have a relationship with my wife that is deep and tender. Does that answer your question?
It's been my experience when I get calls from parents, and they want help with their kids, usually a teenager, and the question I always ask is, is that they'll tell me a little bit about what's going on. I said, well, I always say something along the lines of, well, what if we discovered there might be things you and your husband or you and your wife could do or address that might help your child? Are you open to that possibility? And if I get a response like, well, no, it has nothing to do with us, this is them, I won't take them on as a client. But I have found even those that, in all but 2 cases, it's been my experience, any parent who's struggling with a child, the child is just mirroring what the parents are doing.
Yeah.
And the second I show that to the parent of how their child is just acting out their own dysfunction, and that if the parent were to heal their dysfunction, the child would go in a different direction, they leave. I'll never see them again. And that's the self-deception that I find heartbreaking. Right. That parents want to place the blame on their child as though their child grew up in a vacuum and somehow magically had these dysfunctions that they had nothing to do with. And I blame the medical community for this too, and science and everybody, that it's common. It's just, look, every parent influences their child and their child's development. And for that's not even considered in most medical diagnosis. Like it's not even brought up. That I find criminal. And I think and this isn't about blaming, because you can't blame people who are unaware.
Right.
It's about responsibility and love for ourselves. How can a parent not screw up when you haven't been taught how to do it? And even if you weren't taught,
right.
I mean,
but what you're saying is there has to be a willingness to do it different. If it's working out so good, then why are you talking to me? And I don't ever say that to a client. But
no.
A lot.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
So,
here were a couple of, I wrote down some characteristics. Tell me what you think of these for people to consider whether they might be struggling with self-deception, and add to these. And, if you hear something that's missing, but some of the things that I've noticed are the problem repeats itself, particularly relationship problems. If there's a continual pattern there, there's most likely self-deception. When there's critique, anytime we're critiqued, and that can be criticism or, but they constantly defend. Their initial reaction is defense without even trying on the critique or learning about the critique and going, wait a minute, why do you see it that way? But any critique is immediately met with a defensive wall and diversion. There's addiction present. There's a predominant feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, powerlessness, or anger. Mostly because they think the solution lies in someone else, and that the change needs to occur in the other person, not in themselves. Tremendous justification, and that mostly looks like yes, but, or well, that's because. So they might take their critique and then follow it with a yes, but, or a because. Blaming others for any aspect of their life and not recognizing that they played a part in it. Trying to change others, or believing that the other person needs to change and no aspect is about themselves. You mentioned this, playing the hero by making the situation worse, or making what the other person did worse than what they did, or making ourselves better than the other person. Victimhood and listing, cataloging evidence against the other person. Those were some there. You could go on and on, but those were some main things that popped into my head. What sort of things would you add to that list?
Well, I'm trying to think this out, because I think most of that, what you described, is coming mainly from the powerless side of the spectrum, and I think that it does show up. Falsely empowered people still have those characteristics in their life. They just don't look at it that way. I would like to think about that more so that I can be more concrete than I am right now. But again, I think if we go back to the PIA's model, and you look at the false empowered side, you have the better than perspective. So I know what's going on. I am the person in power. When you were talking, I was thinking about certain types of men who are power men. They're corporate leaders and that kind of thing. And the reality is, I have a good friend who comes across that way. Now, he isn't that way. He's definitely been working on this area, but he just comes across very much in control, and he has the answers. He knows, what's going on with everything. And he doesn't present that way so much, but he could. He just doesn't. But as I have gotten to know him more deeply, it's that there is that is a facade, that facade that I can't feel what I feel. I can't give myself care. I have to be needless and wantless. I have to be in charge of reality or I don't feel safe. I have to hide behind walls or I don't feel safe. And, I have to, like I say, you have to look in control. And so it's all these aspects are really kind of the goals of, at least for men in our society. And it's becoming the goals for women, like what you pointed out before, that, I'm in charge. I know what's going on. I live behind these walls. I don't really know what reality is, but I think I do. I tell people what truth is, and we get on our pulpits about that. And I
have about 600 videos of me on the pulpit, Mike. I'm very good at that. And articles in a book, like I get stuck on that pulpit quite often. Yeah.
But that I become needless and wantless, and not become. I am needless and wantless, and seeing self-care as a way to protect myself versus self-care being a way to care for myself. And I think our society has moved in this direction of, well, if I'm all those things, I'm successful. And I don't think that's successful.
And what is successful? Give people, paint a picture of what moderation would look like and maturity.
Well, I'll go back again to Pia. Being able to love and accept yourself in your imperfections, in reality, that's the beginning. And self-love is, it's a difficult. I have to choose to love myself, and that's a hard skill to learn. Because it's not based on performance, and it's not based on doing, and it's not based on how good I look or how smart I am or how smart you are and you're my friend, or how good looking you are and you are good. You look marvelous. Anyway, but so there's that. There's the element of learning how to live on your side of the net and have internal boundaries where you have, when I picture an internal boundary, which I think is probably more important than external boundaries of, touch and things like that. But there's got to be a place where you can know yourself and you can know yourself in truth and still have love and respect and care for yourself. So there's that element. I think it's about being able to have reality, but not have to dictate reality, which is the foster power side, or have somebody else tell you what reality is. And, sometimes in therapeutic situations, people come in and they don't know what reality are, and they look at you as, look at me as the answer guy. And that doesn't work very well with me. I'll just turn it around on them and ask them, and I'm not doing that to be hard on them. I'm doing that because they've been taught that somebody else has the answer. And both of us are about, we don't want to give, we don't want to be the answer. We want you to be the answer for yourself. And that means that you can see reality, and you don't have to defer all the time, and you don't have to tell people, what reality is.
And that's caregiving.
Yeah. And then there's self-care, learning to ask for what you want and need. And to me, this is a real biggie, because I think when people get frustrated and they want the other person to fix them, they don't go to that step. They don't go, hey, would you be willing to listen to me? Would you be willing to rub my back or whatever? And and that also involves other types of things. You know, again, men are empowered that sex is the answer. Well, sex isn't the answer. I need love. I need understanding. I need care. I need touch that's non-sexual. And so there's different ways that people can learn to do that. Women are great at that. I mean, they go get pedicures and manicures, and they do all, you know, they shop together, and, you know, they do things, at least my experience, the women I know, they do things together with people. Now, I know that's one of the things that the younger, and I don't mean like kids today, I mean people younger than you, and that women are not doing as well as they probably could. And you know, learning to live in a community of people and not be isolated. That's all about, you know, learning how to do self-care.
Yeah.
And, you know, moderate is kind of the last thing, you know, am I emotionally going up or down to one extreme or another, or am I somewhat in a parameter in the middle, and emotionally or whatever. And so you know, I've told the story, but you know, that was the thing that got me into neurofeedback, which was you, is when you came in and you were talking about your relationship. And this was no small thing that you were going through, but you were moderate. And by that, you know, what I expected is that you'd be throwing my trash can across the room, you know, because you'd be so upset and so hurt, but you weren't. You were moderate. You were hurt. You could cry. You could be sad. You could, you know, you weren't being a victim. You know, you were distressed in that situation, which that is appropriate for that situation. And yes, anger is a part of that too, but you know, it was the beginning of a grief process. And what got me, I mean, I was just wowed. I mean, that's why I went, what happened to you? is that you were appropriate in the emotion. Sorry, I'm getting a cramp in my hamstring. You were appropriate in the level of emotionality. You were appropriate in the way you were thinking about things. You were not avoiding it. You weren't magnifying it. And to me, that's life in moderation, which
I love the way you said that right there. That's moderation. Not avoiding it or magnifying it. And there's no deception in that.
Right. And you know, that's another piece of that, because you know, because you were in reality and you could face that reality, as hard as that was, yet you had the abilities and the skills to stay boundaried, to not lose yourself, to not disappear, either with a machoism or, you know, the victimized side of it. And you were asking for help. You were doing self-care. And that's impressive.
I'm so grateful to both women who put up with me. And we got to journey both of our perfect imperfections with each other, you know, the two women I married, and the things they taught me about me and that I learned about relationship and how it led me to all of these things. Like I mean, were there many sad, hurtful things that I've experienced? Of course, and I wouldn't wish those on anyone. But man, thank God. But it's only thank God because instead of laying on the sidewalk bleeding out, I chose to crawl to an emergency room, which, was many counselors before you. I mean, it wasn't that I just started with you. I started at 20, 21 years old. But sadly, very few people are what I would consider qualified. And luckily, the time was right for me to start. The journey was when I met you. And but I'm incredibly, that's what I realized is I needed that second marriage to face things, because really what you're describing is a lot of, because I remember parts of those conversations we had as that marriage was falling apart. And really I was getting into reality. I was dropping out of self-deception. And that's what that relationship taught me the most was, oh my God, I am so full of it in so many areas. And not because I'm a bad person, but it's really hard to see this. And the whole society sets up.
It is hard to see.
It's incredibly hard. And society is so deceived. All of its mechanisms promote not seeing it.
Right.
Like, whoa. And the relief I felt when I could see it, because I came up with this analogy. I call it the scales of injustice. All of us, even me, I still put myself in this category, are in massive denial and self-deception, and some moments less, but I don't believe that process ever ends. I think there's too much, the human psyche is too complex, and we're too close to it to ever fully achieve complete awareness, authentic awareness of ourselves. I think it's too big of I think it's the task of life. And so because of our denial and self-deception, when there's denial and self-deception, there's no truth. I don't see myself clearly. And so because of that, the
I don't see
juxtaposition.
anything clearly, but I think I do.
Exactly. And because of that, I can't have high self-esteem, because with no truth, this must be low. They have to be out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And because I can't love myself if I don't know myself or see myself. And so ultimately, what's the remedy? Truth. I have to get some more sand on this scale of, oh my God, I'm full of it here, I'm full of it here. And there you would pick words that are much more kind than, that, because that sounds really aggressive and mean, and it's not my intent. At any rate, there are better words to describe it. And one day I'll find them where they feel more soothing to me. But the more I can see and admit, oh, yeah, I'm playing a part in this. And oh, I set this up, and oh, I manipulate. Here, a perfect example, like our talk this week, I was talking about an aspect of that relationship and how we broke up early on. I broke up with her. But then I saw the devastation in her face. And I decided to stay because there was two things. One was, wow, growing up the way I did, that looks like somebody who cares about me. To be that devastated, you must care about me. But I had to admit, as I admitted to you, there's also a level of, that's not a word, despicableness. It was despicable what I did, because it was also about power and control. And I wanted that. Look at what I did to her. And, so, but if I can admit that truth and also recognize, well, where did I learn that? Well, those are that level of manipulation. I can tell you my childhood, I can give you thousands of stories of how I learned that that's relationship. So I'm not excusing it, but I can take ownership of it. And that's the reconciliation process. At least when I learned to start to do that, that's why the denial self-deception process to me is the cornerstone of any recovery. That has to be something everyone learns how to do on their journey, because without it, you're masking over and you don't even know it. Would you agree?
I would.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Why don't we end there? Because I think you brought up a great topic. I'd like to do another show where, because you said the change in me on neurofeedback, I'd like to do a show that's all about neurofeedback, because it is a process and a therapy that brings results that I don't think anything else can deliver, and it sticks.
Right.
And that's new and that's powerful. And I think the people that enjoy what I do need to learn about that, because while there may be things I've helped them with, I can't get them across that bridge.
Right. And I was thinking about that earlier. First of all, neurofeedback is not new. It's been around for 60 plus years, but
People's awareness of it.
Awareness is a whole different thing. And I mean, you have to be in the right place and time to even become aware of it. But what it does, I mean, what we're talking about today are skills in general. Having the ability to do self-care, having the ability, or not the ability, learning the skill of self-love, learning the skill of boundaries and self-care. And but for many of us, because of the way our brain works, we don't have abilities that maybe someone whose brain was healthier would be able to do. And so, the more I learn about how our brain works and how it operates, the more, I understand how important it is, not only, for people who are depressed or whatever, but people that are relatively healthy, but they have these inabilities to be able to function appropriately. And, I guess that was the thing that I saw in you, was that you had lots of skills, but you didn't have the ability to get there. And that's right. And so, neurofeedback's about learning how to self-regulate, or teaching your brain to self-regulate so that you are regulating yourself. And having that, having that ability is very important.
Here's how I would describe it. This has been my experience with neurofeedback. To use your bookcase, I've read a lot of books on all of this stuff, and I've learned a boatload of information. I've forgotten more than I remember. And and filled in that is skills, knowledge, skills, and tools is the phrase I use all the time. Tons of them. I'm loaded with them. But many times in my process, I couldn't get to certain shelves on the bookcase. All that information, the knowledge, skill, and tool was right there. I knew it was there. I'd reach for it, but I couldn't grab it and use it because I didn't know this. The brain has a certain way it connects and talks to itself that allows those messages to be acted out. And you can see all of that and know it, but if those wires aren't connecting, you can't do it. Doesn't matter. And that's what was happening to me. And so when I struggle with certain pieces in my life, because I have that library to draw from, as I go back and look, when I get those wires crossed, it's like bam, 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 bam. It's like, there, I can do it. And that's an easy kind of lead into how all of that works. And I want to do a whole show where you can lay out for people, because I think because most people are unaware of it, and think it's new and don't know about it. It needs to be a tool in their tool chest. And so that they and remove the fear around it and uncertainty. And it's like, wow, I need to go look at this and get help with this. So why don't we call it quits on this one? And
can I give one illustration that
please.
really is in line with what we're talking about? In the brain, the right hemisphere is the social and relational hemisphere, and the left hemisphere is the factual and informational. Language happens in the left hemisphere. And in studies, they have shown that people that have strokes or they have some kind of lesions in the right parietal area, fusiform jars, they have a very difficult time actually reading facial expressions, understanding with empathy, all kinds of things like that. And what they discovered is that in these studies that where they had people that were truly impaired, is that they would switch to their left hemisphere and make up a new reality and a new explanation. And so some people that do things like that, might have a condition called schizophrenia, where they think that they've been invaded. And that's their explanation. It's because the left hemisphere will make up something to cover the vacuum if the right hemisphere isn't working well. Well, I've seen that this area, and especially with men, they're in a relationship with their wife, and they aren't getting her. They don't catch the nuances. They don't catch the subtleties of what she's saying to them, because they have damage either from concussion or whatever. This part of the brain over here is not working correctly. And so they flip over and become lawyers, experts, and they argue. And again, they're not aware of the energy they put out. And they think, again, we're talking about self-deception. They think they're doing it right. They are putting out effort. It's just that it's not hitting home. And I remember a guy that's
me
that had this issue, and he called me up after we'd worked with him, and he goes, "I now get it," and this was his term, it wasn't mine, but he said, "I'm going to call that the asshole factor." He said, "I just didn't, I thought I was getting her, and I wasn't, and I was missing it, but now I can see it." And their relationship was on the brink of end, and now it's not. And that's an ability. That's not a skill. He could have worked his butt off trying to mirror and do all the communication skills, all that kind of stuff. But giving him that ability to actually connect relationally,
turning that side of his brain on that he wasn't aware was shut down, brought up natural skills that were already there that he couldn't access.
We just gave him something to see.
Yeah.
He couldn't
got
see
into reality. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
He was blind before, and after that he could see.
Yeah. It's a great way.
Thank you again. You're awful kind to let me join you, and I'm always humbled.
Well, I believe that feeling is mutual. We share in that. So I love that you give me and everyone else your time with this, because there are a lot of people who want help and they just don't know where to go and what's the right help. And at least I can only speak from my experience. the things you've taught me that I now pass on to others, and things I, also went and learned on my own, have helped a lot of people. And I'm thankful that you're coming out and sharing it, because everyone
Well,
says
thank you. You have to pull me out. Thank you for doing that.
yeah. Well, and everyone says things differently. And, like I love Gabor Mate and the way he communicates a lot of this stuff. And because of what you were just talking about, the word choices and the demeanor that I use, I can many times go, ooh, it wasn't quite what I wanted. And I can't always get to it. And so yourself and others, like Gabor specifically, I'm like, that's more the heart I want to express it with. And and I just want more people to get reached, and not everyone will enjoy my voice. So, but I want them to get what I believe is the most thorough, complete information, because there's a lot of people out there providing information. All of it most likely is very good. But I think there's a depth and breadth that you offer that many don't. And that's what interests me. And I like to share that. So as to anyone watching or listening to this, after listening to this, if you feel like self-deception and denial is a struggle for you, my suggestion to you is to pick up a copy of my book, Your Journey to Success. I have a whole process in there that teaches people the process I had to discover, how to conquer my self-deception. That's really what it shows, is how to discover that within yourself. So I'd encourage you to do that. You can find that on Amazon. I'd also encourage you to go to my website, www.thegreatnessuniversity.com. It is a wealth of free information. I'm getting Mike to write more articles. We have another one coming out soon. He's writing more, but there's a previous article on there where you'll learn about neurofeedback. There are many things: codependence, narcissism, relationship, parenting, all these different dynamics. It's a wonderful resource of articles, videos, book recommendations, tons of resources, and free download exercises, things to help you. Maybe it's not self-deception you're struggling with, maybe it's something else, but many ways to help you. And as I always say, no matter what you decide to do, just please, if it works for you, enjoy the journey.